In the quiet town of Willow Creek, Virginia, nestled among rolling hills and whispering pines, I, Emily Harris, lived a life stitched together with dreams and determination. As a seamstress, I spent my days in a small shop on Main Street, needle threading hope into every hem supporting my son Liam through the lean years of the 1980s. My hands, calloused from years of sewing late into the night, told a story of resilience, a woman who'd learned to mend not just fabric but her own spirit after growing up in a struggling farming family. My husband, James Carter, was a rising star at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a military officer whose letters once promised a brighter future for us. But those promises unraveled the day I walked into the county clerk's office in 1987, clutching Liam's birth certificate, ready to secure his place in the world. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and bureaucracy. As I approached the counter, my heart buoyant with pride for my 6-year-old son who loved sketching fighter jets and building model planes from scraps I brought home. Liam's bright eyes and curious questions about his dad, whom he believed was a hero serving our country, fueled my determination to give him the opportunities James's military status could provide. But as the clerk scanned the records, her face tightened, and she slid a document across the counter that shattered my world. James had registered another woman, Laura Bennett, as his wife in the military district of Fort Bragg. Worse, he'd listed Laura's son Noah as his own, granting him full access to military benefits, schooling, healthcare, housing, during an era when strict family registration policies tied benefits to legal dependence. My Liam, my precious boy, was labeled illegitimate, a bastard in the eyes of the system, barred from the military school that could have been his gateway to a better life. The clerk's voice was a dull hum as she explained that only one child could be registered per soldier under the Department of Defense's stringent rules, a policy rooted in the 1980s to manage military resources. Noah had taken Liam's place. My knees buckled and I gripped the counter, the room spinning as betrayal sank its claws into me. James, the man I'd trusted, had built another family behind me, erasing Liam's rights and branding him an outcast. I drove home in a daze, Liam's latest drawing, a jet soaring over Fort Bragg, tucked in my purse, a painful reminder of his dreams. That night I sat him down, his small hands clutching a model plane, and promised to fix this. His trust in me, unwavering despite his young age, steeled my resolve. I called James at the base, my voice trembling with rage. "How could you do this to us?" I demanded, tears burning my eyes. His response was cold, dismissive. "Laura's son needed a father, Emily. You know how tough it is for kids without one at the base. Liam can come, but only as my nephew." Nephew. The word was a knife to my heart, reducing my son to a lie. Desperate, I threatened to expose him, even mentioning drastic measures to make him listen. Only then did he relent, agreeing to let Liam join him at Fort Bragg, but under the humiliating pretense of being a relative, not a son. I packed Liam's small suitcase, tucking in his favorite plane, and we boarded a train from Richmond to North Carolina, hope flickering despite the ache in my chest. The train rattled through the night. Liam was asleep against my shoulder, and his soft snores were a fragile comfort. I stayed awake watching the shadows, whispering prayers for his safety, but prayers weren't enough. At a crowded station, amidst the chaos of passengers, Liam vanished. I screamed his name, shoving through the crowd, but he was gone. Hours later, a conductor found a small bundle in an empty car, 2 tiny severed fingers, Liam's wrapped in a bloodied cloth. My world collapsed. I collapsed onto the platform, clutching the bundle, my screams echoing as strangers stared. Human traffickers, the police later said, preyed on vulnerable children at transit hubs. I begged James to place a missing child ad in the papers to do anything. He scoffed over the phone, his voice dripping with disdain. "Emily, you're being dramatic. Liam's already gone. If you keep this up, it'll hurt Laura and Noah. Think of them. Think of them." My son was gone, his dreams of jets and heroes stolen, and James cared only for his new family. The grief was a weight I couldn't bear. In my past life, I'd been a woman who mended, who endured, but this was beyond repair. In despair, I drove to the James River, its dark waters glinting under a winter moon. As I stood on the bank, the cold biting my skin, I thought of Liam's drawings, trust, and stolen future. I whispered an apology to him and stepped into the icy current, letting it pull me under, praying for an end to the pain. But as the water closed over me, a warmth spread through my chest, a promise of redemption. My story isn't just mine, it's for every mother fighting for her child, every heart broken by betrayal. If it resonates with you, hit that like button, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph over adversity. Join us as we unravel how I turned pain into power, because this is only the beginning. As the James River's icy grip tightened, a radiant light pierced the darkness, enveloping me in warmth. A gentle, yet commanding voice echoed in my mind. Emily Harris, your love for your son has earned you a second chance. Right these wrongs for him and for you. I gasped, my eyes snapping open to find myself back in my small Willow Creek apartment, the calendar on the wall reading March 15th, 1987, the very day I was to register Liam's birth certificate at the county clerk's office. My heart pounded, the memory of Liam's severed fingers searing my mind, but my hands were empty clean. Liam slept peacefully in his room, his model plane clutched to his chest, unaware of the fate I'd lived through. I knelt beside him, brushing his dark curls, my seamstress's hands trembling with purpose. This time I wouldn't fail him. The voice's promise lingered, a divine gift I couldn't explain but wouldn't question. I'd grown up on a struggling farm, learning to sew to help my mother make ends meet, turning scraps into dresses that brought smiles to neighbors. That resilience, honed through years of scraping, by now fueled my resolve. I dressed quickly, pulling on my best blouse, and woke Liam, his bright eyes sparkling as he clutched his latest drawing, a fighter jet soaring over a green valley. "Mom, are we going to see Dad today?" he asked, his voice full of hope. I forced a smile, hiding the truth about James. "We're going to make things right, sweetheart," I said, tucking his drawing into my purse. At the county clerk's office, the same clerk from my past life sat behind the counter, but this time I was ready. "I'm Emily Harris, here to register my son, Liam Harris," I said firmly, sliding his birth certificate forward. The clerk's fingers hesitated over the keyboard, her eyes narrowing as she checked the system. "There's a conflict," she began, pulling up James's registration of Laura and Noah. My heart raced, but I leaned forward, my voice steady. "That's my husband, James Carter. I'm his legal wife. Check our marriage certificate." I handed over the document. Its ink is a lifeline to justice. The clerk's eyes widened, but she processed Liam's registration under my name, ensuring his legal status as my son, not James's nephew. I didn't stop there. The sheriff's station was next door, its fluorescent lights harsh against the morning sun. I marched in Liam's small hand in mine and faced a grizzled deputy. My husband, James Carter, committed bigamy. I declared, my voice shaking but resolute. He registered another woman as his wife at Fort Bragg, denying my son his rights. I'm his legal wife, and I demand justice. Sensing my urgency, Liam squeezed my hand, his quiet courage mirroring my own. The deputy took my statement, his pen scratching as I recounted James's betrayal, the military's strict dependent policies, and Liam's stolen future. "If you don't act, I'll sit here with my son until the whole town knows," I said, my eyes locked on his. The deputy nodded, promising to contact Fort Bragg. Back home, I sat Liam down, his sketches spread across our kitchen table. "Mom, why can't I go to Dad's school?" he asked, his fingers tracing a jet's wings. I knelt before him, choosing my words carefully. "Your dad's made some mistakes, but we're fixing them. You're going to have everything you deserve." His trust, so pure despite the pain I knew was coming, strengthened my resolve. I spent the evening sewing, my needle flashing as I mended Liam's jacket, preparing for the confrontation I knew would come. The divine voice's promise echoed in my mind, right these wrongs. I didn't know how I'd been granted this chance, whether by God or fate, but I felt its weight, a sacred duty to protect Liam. 3 days later, a sheriff's call brought James back from Fort Bragg, far quicker than in my past life, where I'd sent desperate letters and even cut my thumb to write in blood, waiting a month for his return. He arrived with Laura and Noah, and their presence starkly contrasted with our modest home. In a gaudy red dress, Laura handed out candy to neighbors who fawned over her as James's real wife, their whispers cutting deep. A local boy ran up, taunting Liam. "You ain't got no dad, kid." Liam's face fell, but he stood tall, clutching my hand. "I've got Mom," he whispered, his voice steady despite the hurt. I held him close, my heart aching but resolute. James stood in our doorway, his officer's uniform crisp, but his expression cold. "What's this about Emily?" he demanded, his eyes flicking to Liam, who watched curiously. I shielded Liam, sending him to his room with his plane, then faced James. "Why is Laura's son registered as yours?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. James shifted, his jaw tightening, while Laura's smile faltered, Noah's fatherless Emily. "Kids like him get bullied at the base. I did it to protect him." His excuse was flimsy, a lie to cover his betrayal. I stared him down, the memory of Liam's loss burning in my chest. This time, I wouldn't let James's words sway me. I had a divine chance, and I'd use it to rewrite our story, starting with this moment. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of our Willow Creek apartment, casting soft shadows on the worn wooden floor. where Liam sat sketching a new fighter jet with meticulous care. His small hands, already rough from helping me gather firewood for our stove, moved the pencil with a focus that belied his 6 years. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride for my son, who dreamed of soaring skies, despite the weight of our small town life. As a seamstress, I'd spent years stitching together a living from scraps my resilience forged on my family's struggling Virginia farm, where I'd learned to turn old fabric into hope. But today that hope was tested. 3 days after I'd registered Liam's birth certificate and reported James's bigamy to the sheriff, a sharp knock rattled our door. Before I opened it, I knew who it was: James Carter, my husband, whose betrayal had shattered us in my past life. I sent Liam to his room with his sketchbook, his curious eyes lingering on the door. "Stay there, sweetheart," I said, softly, steeling myself. Outside stood James, his Fort Bragg officer's uniform crisp, his jaw irritated. Beside him was Laura Bennett, her red dress loud against the muted greens of Willow Creek, her son Noah clinging to her hand. In my past life, I'd waited a month for James, sending desperate letters written in my own blood, but this time a single sheriff's call had brought him back in days. Oblivious to my pain, Laura handed out candies to neighbors who gathered like moths, whispering her praises as James's real wife. Their words stung, but I held my ground, remembering the divine voice that had granted me the second chance to right these wrongs. "Emily, what's this nonsense about the sheriff?" James demanded, his voice low but sharp, his eyes flicking past me as if I were an inconvenience. Laura's smile was tight, her curled hair bouncing as she adjusted Noah's miniature army jacket. Noah, a year older than Liam, smirked his eyes, scanning our modest home with disdain. I straightened my seamstress's hands steady, despite the storm in my chest. "Why is Laura's son registered as yours at Fort Bragg?" I asked, my voice calm but cutting. James shifted his boots, scuffing the porch. "Noah's fatherless Emily. Kids like him get eaten alive at the base without a name. I did it to protect him." His excuse was a flimsy shield I'd believed in my past life, but not now. Laura stepped forward, her voice syrupy. "Emily, we're just trying to make things work. James is doing his best for everyone." Her words were a mockery, her candy-sweet charm a mask for the family she'd stolen. I glanced at Noah, who tugged at her sleeve, whining. "This place is a dump, Mom. No TV, no nothing." His scorn mirrored James's indifference, and it took all my strength not to snap. Instead, I kept my gaze on James. "And what about Liam?" "Your son." I pressed, my voice rising to draw the neighbor's eyes. James hesitated, his guilt a fleeting shadow across his face. "Liam can come to the base as my nephew. The military's strict about dependents, only one kid gets benefits. Noah's already registered." The word nephew was a slap, echoing the humiliation of my past life when Liam had been erased from James's world. I remembered the 1980s military policies where benefits like schooling and housing hinged on legal registration, a system James had manipulated to favor Laura's son. My mind flashed to Liam's severed fingers, the traffickers who'd stolen him on that cursed train. I wouldn't let that happen again. "Liam is your son," I said, my voice steady but fierce. "You don't get to rewrite his life for your mistress." Laura's face paled and James's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a neighbor's child ran up, taunting Liam's. "Got no dad. He's nobody." The words cut deep, and I saw Liam peek from his room, his sketchbook clutched tight, his eyes wide with hurt. I knelt, pulling him close, his small body trembling. "You've got me, Liam," I whispered, my voice a promise. He nodded, his trust a lifeline. "I know, Mom," he said softly, his fingers tracing the jet on his page. I stood facing James and Laura, whose awkward silence betrayed their unease. "I told you can't sweep this under the rug," my tone final. "The sheriff knows, and I'm not backing down." James's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, turning to leave, with Laura and Noah trailing behind. As they walked away, neighbors whispered their candies forgotten, and I knew this confrontation was just the beginning. I closed the door, my heart racing with the weight of my reborn purpose to protect Liam no matter the cost. The next morning, Willow Creek was cloaked in a bitter chill that seeped into your bones and made every step a battle. I sat at my sewing machine, mending a neighbor's coat, my hands moving with the precision of years turning scraps into something whole. Liam was in the backyard, his laughter a rare melody as he played with Daisy, a stray kitten I'd rescued during my pregnancy. Her soft meows had kept me company through sleepless nights, and now she was Liam's shadow, purring as he dangled a string for her. His love for creating, whether sketching jets or building model planes from cardboard, shone in these moments, a spark of joy in our hardscrabble life. but that joy was fragile, and I braced myself for the storm I knew was coming. James, Laura, and Noah had stayed in Willow Creek renting a room at the local inn, and their presence was a dark cloud over our home. I'd hoped to shield Liam from their cruelty, but it found us anyway. I heard a commotion outside and rushed to the backyard, my heart sinking. Liam sat on the cold ground, tears streaming down his face, clutching Daisy's lifeless body. Noah stood nearby, arms crossed with a smug grin as he kicked at the dirt. "Stupid cat," he sneered. "The teacher said they got 9 lives, so I checked." His miniature army jacket, a mockery of James's uniform, glinted in the sunlight, and I saw red. Laura hovered behind him, checking him for scratches, her face a mask of false concern. James stood by, his expression unreadable, but his silence deafening. "Liam, what happened?" I asked, kneeling beside him, my voice gentle but trembling. He sobbed, his words broken. "Noah hurt Daisy, Mom. He said I'm a nobody, that I'm stealing his dad." His small hands, scarred from gathering firewood to help me, shook as he held the kitten, her warmth gone. Daisy had been more than a pet. She was family, a symbol of the love we'd built, despite James's absence. I pulled Liam into my arms, tears soaking my blouse, and glared at Noah. "How could you?" I demanded, my voice low but fierce. Noah shrugged, unrepentant, while Laura cooed. "He was just curious, Emily. Kids do silly things." Her dismissal was a knife twisting deeper when James spoke up, his tone sharp. "Liam, you're making a fuss over a stray," he said, stepping forward. "You disrespect your brother like that again, and you'll regret it." Before I could stop him, James slapped Liam across the cheek, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Liam gasped, his hand flying to his face, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. My vision blurred with rage, but I shielded Liam, my body a barrier between him and James. "Don't you dare touch my son," I said, my voice a growl. "You've never taught him a thing." "What gives you the right to hit him?" James froze, his hand still raised, while Laura's face flushed with embarrassment. Noah whined, "Dad, let's go. This place stinks." I scooped Liam up, his small body shaking, and carried him inside, away from their poison. "Go to your room, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing his forehead. He nodded, clutching his sketchbook, his eyes red but trusting. I turned back to James, my voice cold. "You know Liam didn't lie about Noah. You're just too blind to see your own failure." Without waiting for a response, I slammed the door, my heart pounding with fury and fear. The memory of my past life, Liam's kidnapping, James's indifference, loomed large, but this time I'd fight harder. The snow began to fall as I bundled Liam in his coat, his cheeks swollen and red. "We're going to the doctor," I said, my voice firm. The hospital was miles away, and our neighbors, swayed by James's military status and Laura's candies, refused to lend their cars. I carried Liam through the snow, his weight a reminder of my duty, my boots sinking into the drifts. At the county hospital, a kind-eyed doctor cleaned Liam's cheek with iodine, her frown deepening. She said this could have scarred permanently, her voice laced with disapproval. "No child should be hit like that." Liam, trying to be brave, tugged my sleeve. "Mom, I'm sorry I made Dad mad. Will he leave again?" His words broke me, his fear that he was to blame a wound deeper than the bruise. I knelt, holding his hands, his sketches of jets peeking from his pocket. "Liam, you did nothing wrong," I said, my voice steady. "Your real dad's a hero, not the man who hurt you. I'll make sure you're safe." He nodded, his trust a fragile gift. As we left the hospital, the snow still falling, I thought of the divine voice that had brought me back. James's cruelty had reignited my resolve, and I knew the next step was Fort Bragg, to demand justice not just for me, but for every mother fighting for her child. I held Liam close, his warmth my anchor, and vowed to rewrite our story no matter what it took. The snow fell relentlessly over Willow Creek, Virginia, blanketing the town in a silence broken only by the crunch of my boots as I carried Liam through the drifts. His small body still trembling from James's slap pressed against me, his cheeks swollen and red beneath the scarf I'd wrapped around him. My arms ached, but my resolve burned fiercer than the winter cold. As a seamstress, I'd spent years stitching together a life from scraps, my hands hardened from nights spent sewing to keep us fed. Born on a struggling farm, I'd learned to endure, turning worn cloth into dresses that brought smiles to neighbors. That resilience now carried me forward, each step a defiance of the betrayal that had shattered us in my past life. My 6-year-old artist Liam clutched his sketchbook, its pages filled with fighter jets and dreams of soaring skies. His quiet courage, despite the pain, was my anchor. The hospital was 10 miles away, and our neighbors, swayed by James's military status and Laura's charm, refused to lend their cars. "He's a hero," Emily once said, shaking her head. You're making trouble. Their words stung, but I pushed on Liam's weight, a reminder of my promise to protect him. The memory of my past life, his kidnapping on that cursed train, his severed fingers haunted me, urging me to act. At the county hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed as Dr. Helen Carter, a kind-eyed woman with graying hair, examined Liam's cheek. This could have left a permanent scar, she said, her voice thick with disapproval as she cleaned the bruise with iodine. No child deserves this, no matter what he did. Liam sat still, his eyes fixed on his sketchbook where a half-finished jet gleamed under pencil strokes. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, his voice small. "I made Dad mad. Will he leave again?" My heart twisted. Liam's love for creating sketching planes and building models from cardboard revealed a sensitive soul that blamed itself for James's cruelty. I knelt, cupping his face gently. I said, "You did nothing wrong, sweetheart," my voice steady despite the ache. "Your real dad's a hero, not the man who hurt you. I'll make sure you're safe." He nodded his trust, a fragile gift, and showed me his latest drawing, a jet soaring over Fort Bragg where he still hoped to go. "I want to be a pilot, Mom," he said softly, his eyes bright with dreams. I smiled, hiding my fear, and promised myself he'd have that chance. As Dr. Carter bandaged Liam's cheek, she glanced at me, her expression softening. "You're a strong mother, Emily. Don't let anyone take that from you." Her words echoed the divine voice that had granted me the second chance, a radiant light that had pulled me from the James River with a mission to right these wrongs. I thanked her, my resolve hardening. Back home, I tucked Liam into bed, his sketchbook beside him. Daisy's absence, a quiet wound. I sat at my sewing machine, the hum of the needle grounding me as I mended his jacket, its seams a promise of protection. The 1980s military system, with its rigid dependent policies, had allowed James to erase Liam's rights, favoring Laura's son Noah for benefits like schooling and housing. I wouldn't let that stand. I packed a small bag, Liam's drawings, my marriage certificate, a few clothes, and planned our trip to Fort Bragg. In my past life, I'd swallowed James's lies, agreeing to let Liam live as his nephew, only to lose him to traffickers. This time, I'd confront the military, directly demanding justice for my son. As I sewed, I thought of my childhood hauling hay bales to help my mother learning to stitch to ease her burdens. That strength born of necessity now fueled my fight. Liam stirred, murmuring in his sleep, and I brushed his curls, whispering, "We're going to make things right." The snow outside fell thicker, but my path was clear, Fort Bragg, where I'd faced James and the system that had failed us. The next morning, I bundled Liam in his mended jacket, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. "We're going to Dad's base," he asked, his voice hopeful yet wary. I nodded, forcing a smile. "We're going to get what you deserve, Liam." The bus to Richmond was cramped, the road slick with ice, but Liam's chatter about jet designs kept me grounded. At the station, I held his hand tightly, the memory of his kidnapping a shadow I couldn't shake. We boarded the train to Fort Bragg, my heart pounding with the weight of what lay ahead. I wasn't just fighting for Liam's future, I was fighting for the mother I'd been, in my past life lost and hopeless, and for every woman betrayed by those meant to protect them. The gates of Fort Bragg loomed under a gray North Carolina sky, their iron bars a barrier between us and the justice I sought. I held Liam's hand, his small fingers clutching his sketchbook where a new jet drawing a sleek F-16 peeked from the pages. His love for planes, sparked by stories I'd told of a heroic father, shone even now, his eyes wide as he watched soldiers pass. My resolve, forged on my family's Virginia farm and honed through years of sewing to survive, steadied me. I'd been reborn to right these wrongs and wouldn't falter. At the gate, a young guard eyed us skeptically, his voice dripping with doubt. "You're James Carter's wife." "Everyone knows Lieutenant Carter's wife is Laura." I handed him my marriage certificate, and its ink is a testament to my truth. "Check it," I said, my voice firm. "I'm Emily Harris, his legal wife, and this is his son, Liam." The guard curled his lip, muttering about trouble from the countryside, but he made a call, his voice loud enough for me to hear. "Sir Carter's ex-wife is here causing a scene. Ex-wife." The label stung, proof that James and Laura had poisoned my name on the base. Liam squeezed my hand, his trust unwavering, and I nodded at him, a silent promise. The guard led us to a two-story building, its brick facade stern and unyielding. Inside, Captain Sarah Thompson, a sharp-eyed officer with a no-nonsense air, waited at her desk. Her uniform was crisp, her gaze piercing, but I saw a flicker of empathy as she looked at Liam, who clutched his sketchbook like a shield. I dropped to my knees before her, my voice breaking but resolute. Captain, I've been abandoned. James registered another woman as his wife, denying my son his rights. We've suffered and I need your help. I pulled Liam forward, lifting his small hands scarred from gathering firewood to help me survive. These are from years of work no child should do, I said. I lifted my blouse, revealing the jagged C-section scar from Liam's birth when Willow Creek's understaffed hospital couldn't provide a surgeon. I delivered him alone, I said, my voice steady. Then I rolled up my pant leg, exposing burn scars from a local thug's assault when I'd fought him off after he cornered me at our stove. This is what I endured while James built a new family. Liam's eyes widened, but he stood tall, his sketchbook open to a jet soaring over a green field. I want to go to school here, ma'am, he said softly, his voice brave despite his fear. Captain Thompson's face shifted from concern to fury, her hand slamming the desk. This is outrageous, she snapped. Carter's actions violate military marriage laws. Her anger gave me hope, a crack in the system that had failed us. I seized the moment, my voice clear. I want a divorce from James, and I need compensation. Liam deserves a future here at the base school, and I'm asking the military to act as a matchmaker, find me a new husband who will accept Liam as his own. Thompson hesitated, her eyes softening as she looked at Liam's scars, then mine. Laura's listed as a martyr's widow, she said carefully. The military handles such cases delicately, and Carter's record is strong, but your evidence is undeniable. She leaned forward, her voice firm. Show me more. I pulled out Liam's birth certificate and marriage license, laying them on her desk. James registered Laura's son Noah as his own, taking Liam's benefits. In the 1980s, the Department of Defense limited dependents to one child per soldier for schooling and housing. James chose Noah, leaving Liam labeled a bastard. Thompson's jaw tightened, and she nodded. I'll investigate. Stay here at the base guest house tonight. She arranged for us to stay in a small courtyard home, its roses blooming despite the chill starkly contrasting with Willow Creek's muddy yard. Liam wandered the clean bathroom, his eyes wide at the indoor plumbing, which differed from our outhouse. Mom, is this where Dad lives? He asked, his voice curious. I shook my head, kneeling beside him. This is where we start over, Liam. He showed me his F-16 sketch, its wings sharp and proud. He said, I want to fly one someday, his smile tentative but bright. I hugged him, my heart swelling with his resilience like mine. That night as he slept, I sat by the window, the divine voice's promise echoing in my mind. Captain Thompson's fury was a spark, and I'd fan it into justice for Liam, me, and the mother I'd been in my past life, lost to despair. The morning sun spilled over the rose-lined courtyard of our temporary home at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, its warmth starkly contrasting with the icy chill of Willow Creek, Virginia. I stood at the kitchen window, my seamstress's hands tracing the edge of a new school bag I'd sewn for Liam, its sturdy denim, a promise of the fresh start he deserved. My life stitched together from the scraps of a struggling farm childhood and years of mending clothes to survive had taught me to find strength in adversity. Now that strength anchored me as I built a future for my 6-year-old son, whose love for sketching fighter jets and building model planes lit up his eyes. Liam sat at the table, his pencil dancing across a page, creating a sleek F-16 soaring over a field, his small hands still scarred from gathering firewood back home. His resilience, like mine, fueled my hope as we settled into this new chapter. Captain Sarah Thompson's investigation had shaken Fort Bragg. She'd uncovered James Carter's violation of military marriage laws, his false claim of divorce, to register Laura Bennett and her son Noah as his family. The 1980s Department of Defense policies, rigid about dependents, allowed only one child per soldier to receive benefits, like schooling and housing, and James had chosen Noah, erasing Liam's rights. Thompson's fury had been a turning point. She'd demoted James from deputy commander to company commander, stripping him of the base housing now assigned to us. Laura, listed as a martyr's widow, faced scrutiny, her status hinging on her late husband's sacrifice. Thompson had also granted my requests. Liam was enrolled in the base school, and I'd been hired as a seamstress at the quartermaster's office, mending uniforms with the same care I'd once given neighbors' dresses. I handed Liam his new school bag, its straps reinforced for durability. For your first day, I said, smiling as his eyes widened. Mom, it's perfect, he exclaimed, slinging it over his shoulder, his sketchbook tucked inside. Will the kids like my planes? His voice held a mix of hope and fear, the memory of Willow Creek's taunts calling him a nobody still fresh. I knelt, brushing his curls. They'll love you, Liam. You're brave and kind, just like the heroes you draw. He nodded, his smile tentative but growing, and I felt a surge of pride. In my past life, Liam had been denied this chance lost to traffickers on a train to this very base. This time, I'd ensured his place, my divine second chance, a guiding light. We walked to the base school, a brick building buzzing with children. Liam clutched my hand, his F-16 sketch peeking from his bag. The teacher, Ms. Evans, greeted us warmly, her eyes softening at Liam's shy smile. She said, "We've got a great art program," noting his sketchbook. "You'll fit right in." I watched him join the other kids, his steps hesitant but eager, and my heart swelled. Back at the courtyard home, I unpacked our few belongings, and the roses outside symbolized healing. The bathroom with its clean tiles and running water was a luxury compared to Willow Creek's outhouse. Liam's room held a small desk perfect for his model planes, and I imagined him thriving here, free from the stigma that had haunted us. That afternoon, Thompson visited. Her uniform was crisp, but her expression was kind. "Liam's enrollment is secure," she said, "and your job starts Monday. We're also looking into your matchmaking request." I nodded, grateful but cautious. "Thank you, Captain. I want a stable future for Liam, someone who'll see him as their own." She studied me, her gaze steady. "You're a fighter, Emily. We'll find someone worthy." Her words echoed the divine voice that had pulled me from the James River, urging me to right these wrongs. As she left, I sat by the roses sewing a patch onto Liam's jacket, my needle steady despite the weight of my past life's losses. Liam returned from school, his face alight with a smile I hadn't seen in Willow Creek. "Mom, the kids played with me," he said, showing me a new sketch, a jet with classmates' names on its wings. "They called me Liam, not anything else." His joy was a balm, proof that this new home was the start of something better. The Fort Bragg courtyard hummed with evening activity, children's laughter, mingling with the scent of blooming roses, as I sat on the porch mending a soldier's uniform. My hands, calloused from years of sewing to support Liam and me, moved with precision, each stitch a step toward stability. My childhood on a Virginia farm, where I'd learned to turn scraps into hope, had prepared me for this fight. Liam, now settled at the base school, was thriving, his sketchbook filled with fighter jets and new friends' names, his confidence growing daily. His love for planes, sparked by stories I'd told of a heroic father, shone brighter here, free from Willow Creek's cruelty. But the shadow of James and Laura lingered, their presence, a reminder of the betrayal that had nearly destroyed us in my past life. Captain Sarah Thompson's investigation had unraveled James's lies. A DNA test prompted by rumors about Laura's status as a martyr's widow confirmed Noah was James's son, not the child of her late husband, a fallen soldier whose sacrifice had earned her benefits. The revelation stripped Laura of her job at the base commissary and her martyr's widow compensation, forcing her to confront the truth of her choices. She'd pursued James for the security his status offered her, ambition blinding her to the family she'd torn apart. Demoted and disgraced, James faced whispers from soldiers who once respected him. The base housing, now ours, symbolized justice, but I knew the fight wasn't over. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Parker stood there, his uniform sharp, his posture rigid with a military salute. "Ma'am, I'm Ethan Parker, Deputy Commander of Unit X, your assigned match from the organization." He said, his voice warm but formal. His brown eyes held a quiet strength, and I noticed a faint scar on his jaw, a mark of battles fought. Liam peeked from his room, his sketchbook open, to a jet soaring over Fort Bragg. "Who's that, Mom?" he asked, his curiosity bright. I sent him back to draw, then invited Ethan inside, my heart cautious but open. "Captain Thompson mentioned you," I said, setting aside my sewing. "Why would a man like you agree to a match with a divorced mother?" Ethan sat, his hands clasped. "An injury from a mission left me unable to have kids," he said, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "I saw how you fought for Liam and carried those scars for him. I admire that strength." His words stirred something in me, a flicker of hope I hadn't felt since my rebirth. Before I could respond, the gate creaked, and James stormed in, Laura and Noah trailing behind. "What's this about matchmaking?" James barked, his face red with fury. Laura's eyes darted to Ethan, her voice dripping with false concern. "Emily, we were worried about you disappearing like this." "What did you tell the commander?" I stood, my voice calm but firm. "I told the truth, James. I asked for Liam's school enrollment and a divorce." His face paled, the word divorce a blow he hadn't expected. I'd stayed silent in my past life, shielding him in Willow Creek while he built a life with Laura. Now I held my ground. You denied Liam his rights, I said. You don't get to control us anymore. James reached for my arm, his voice low. Be reasonable, Emily. Go back to the village with Liam. I'll handle everything. His words echoed my past life's promises, empty and cruel. Ethan stepped forward, his presence commanding. She's my matchmaking candidate, Carter, he said, his tone sharp. Where do you think you're taking her? James froze, his eyes flicking to Ethan's higher rank, his fists clenching. Laura's face twisted, tears welling as she clung to Noah, silently accusing James of betrayal. Liam emerged, his school bag dropping as he heard James's words. We're not divorced, Emily, and you're already chasing other men. I always doubted Liam was mine. The lie was a dagger, and Liam's eyes reddened, his small body trembling. Before I could react, he ran at James, biting his hand, refusing to let go. James raised his leg to kick, but a thunderous voice stopped him. Carter, what the hell are you doing? Captain Thompson stood at the gate, her eyes blazing. This is your wife and son, and you insult them with filth. She pointed at James, her voice a whip. You lied about your divorce, violating military law. You're lucky it's just a demotion. Laura tried to speak, but Thompson's glare silenced her. You knew he had a family, Bennett. That compensation was for dignity, not to destroy others. I held Liam close, his sketchbook pressed against my chest, his trust in me, a shield against James's venom. Thompson's words were justice, a promise of the future I'd fight for, and with Ethan at my side, I knew we were no longer alone. The Fort Bragg courtyard glowed under the North Carolina sun, its roses a vibrant testament to the new life Liam and I were building. I sat at a small table in our temporary home, my seamstress's hands threading a needle through a soldier's uniform, each stitch a step toward stability. My childhood on a Virginia farm, where I'd learned to turn worn fabric into hope, had taught me resilience, a skill that anchored me as I mended our future. Liam, my 6-year-old dreamer, sprawled on the floor, his sketchbook open to a new fighter jet, its wings adorned with the names of his new school friends. His love for planes, sparked by stories I'd told of a heroic father, shone brighter here, his confidence growing each day at the base school. The scars on his hands from gathering firewood in Willow Creek were fading, but the memory of James's betrayal and Liam's stolen future in my past life burned in my chest. Captain Sarah Thompson's investigation had turned Fort Bragg upside down. James Carter, demoted from deputy commander to company commander for violating military marriage laws, had lost the respect of his peers. His false claim of divorce to register Laura Bennett and her son Noah as his family had unraveled when a DNA test confirmed Noah was his, not the child of Laura's late husband, a fallen soldier. The 1980s Department of Defense policies, strict about dependents, allowed only one child per soldier to receive benefits like schooling and housing, and James's choice had erased Liam's rights. Laura, whose ambition for security had driven her to pursue. James lost her martyr's widow benefits and her job at the base commissary. The base housing once theirs was now ours, a symbol of justice won through my reborn resolve. I adjusted Liam's school bag, its denim sturdy from my late-night sewing, as he prepared for another day at school. Mom, look, he said, holding up his sketch, a jet soaring over Fort Bragg, its tail marked with Liam's squad. His smile, free from Willow Creek's taunts, was a victory. You're my hero, sweetheart, I said, kissing his forehead. He slung the bag over his shoulder, his steps confident as he headed to the bus. At the quartermaster's office, I mended uniforms, my needle steady as soldiers thanked me, unaware of the storm I'd weathered. Thompson's promise of matchmaking lingered, but my focus was on Liam, his happiness, his future, the dreams I'd nearly lost to traffickers in my past life. That evening, James and Laura appeared at our gate, their faces drawn. James's uniform hung looser, his demotion a visible weight, while a plain sweater replaced Laura's red dress. Her charm had faded. Noah clung to her, his miniature army jacket rumpled, his arrogance dimmed by whispers at school. Emily, we need to talk, James said, his voice tight. Laura's eyes darted nervously, her ambition now a trap. We were worried she lied, her voice thin. You've stirred up trouble with the commander. I stood firm, my hands steady from years of sewing. I told the truth, I said. Liam's enrolled here and I've asked for a divorce. You don't control us anymore. James's face reddened, his pride stung. Divorce, he sputtered. You've been quiet in Willow Creek all these years, shielding me. Now you're throwing it away. In my past life, I'd swallowed his lies, staying silent to protect his career while he built a family with Laura. Now I saw through him. You threw us away, James, I said, my voice cold. You chose Noah over Liam, your own son. Laura's eyes welled her silence in admission of guilt. She'd chased James for the status his officer's rank offered, but her gamble had collapsed. Noah tugged her sleeve, whining, "Mom, let's go. This place is lame." His words echoed his earlier scorn, but now they sounded hollow, his confidence shaken by the base's gossip. Before James could respond, Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Parker arrived, his presence a quiet strength. "Everything okay, Emily?" he asked, his scar-flecked jaw set as he eyed James. I nodded, grateful for his support. "James was leaving," I said. James glared at Ethan, his fists clenching at the higher rank, but he backed off, pulling Laura and Noah away. As they left, I heard base children whispering, "That's the lady who stole a husband." The gossip, though cruel, was fleeting, and I focused on Liam, who returned from school, his face alight. "Mom, we made paper planes today," he said, showing me a folded jet. His joy was my triumph, proof that justice was taking root. The Fort Bragg air was crisp, and the roses in our courtyard were a quiet reminder of the peace Liam and I had found. I stood at my sewing machine mending a sergeant's jacket, my hands moving with the rhythm of a life rebuilt. My farm upbringing, where I'd stitched dresses to ease my family's burdens, had taught me to create from nothing, and now I was weaving a future for Liam. He sat at the kitchen table, his sketchbook open, to a jet soaring over a mountain, his pencil strokes confident. His new friends at school had nicknamed him Jet, a far cry from Willow Creek's taunts of nobody. His resilience, mirroring my own, was a light in the darkness of my past life, where his kidnapping had broken me. Now at Fort Bragg, he was thriving, and his dreams of becoming a pilot took flight. Captain Thompson's justice was swift. James's demotion had stripped him of his base housing, forcing him and Laura to rent a small apartment off base. The DNA test, revealing Noah as James's son, had shattered Laura's status as a martyr's widow, ending her benefits and job. Whispers spread across Fort Bragg, soldiers and spouses shunning Laura as a homewrecker. Her ambition, once fueled by the promise of James's status, had led her to betray another family, and now she faced the consequences. I received my divorce certificate, its official seal, a weight lifted from my heart. Desperate to salvage his image, James rushed to marry Laura, but their ceremony was a quiet affair, overshadowed by gossip. She acted so pure, a neighbor muttered at the base market, but stole a husband and lied about her kid. Laura's attempts to charm with smiles failed. Her candies were rejected by those who'd seen her true self. Liam returned from school, his bag bouncing as he ran to me. "Mom, we learned about jets today," he said, showing me a sketch of an F-15, its wings marked with Jet's crew. His joy, unmarred by the bruises James had left, was a testament to our new life. I hugged him, my needle pausing. "You're soaring Jet," I said, using his nickname. He grinned, his eyes bright with dreams. At the quartermaster's office, I overheard soldiers discussing James's fall. "Carter's a company commander now," one said. "Lost his shot at promotion." The gossip was a shadow, but it didn't touch us. Liam's school reports praised his creativity, and paper planes winning a class contest, and I knew we were on the right path. Ethan Parker visited that evening, his uniform crisp as he sat with Liam, admiring his latest jet sketch. "You've got talent, kid," he said, his voice warm. Liam beamed, offering Ethan a paper plane. "Fly it with me, sir," he asked, his trust a gift. Ethan obliged, their laughter filling the courtyard as the aircraft soared. I watched, my heart stirring. Ethan's injury preventing him from having children had drawn him to us, but his kindness was genuine. "Emily, you've raised a good boy," he said later, his eyes meeting mine. "If you'll let me, I'd like to be part of his life." His honest and unguarded words echoed the divine voice that had granted me this chance. I nodded, cautious but hopeful, wanting to see how he'd bond with Liam. James appeared at the gate, his face haggard, his pride crumbling. "Emily, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. Laura and Noah were absent, their new life unraveling. "I heard Liam's doing well," he said, rubbing his hands. "I want to see him." I stood firm, my seamstress's hands steady. "You lost that right when you chose Laura," I said. "Liam's not yours anymore." His eyes darkened, but he left the gossip following him like a shadow. I learned Laura struggled off base, her charm useless against the truth. Noah faced bullying at school, his martyr's son status gone, his arrogance earning him no friends. Their downfall, while just, was a mirror of the pain Liam had endured, and I focused on my son's light. As I tucked Liam into bed, his sketchbook open to a jet with Ethan's name on its wing, I felt the weight of my past life easing. The divorce was final, our home secure, and Ethan's presence a promise of something new. I kissed Liam's forehead, whispering, "You're my hero, Jet." His bright and unburdened smile was the justice I'd fought for, a step toward the future I'd been reborn to claim. The Fort Bragg courtyard bloomed with roses, their petals a quiet promise of the life Liam and I were weaving together. I stood at my sewing machine, mending a soldier's uniform, my hands moving with the steady rhythm of a woman who'd learned to create from nothing. My childhood on a Virginia farm, stitching dresses to ease my family's struggles, had forged a resilience that now anchored me. My 7-year-old dreamer, Liam, sat cross-legged on the floor, his sketchbook open to a fighter jet soaring over a mountain, its wings marked with Jet's crew, and a new name, Ethan. His love for planes, sparked by stories I'd told of a heroic father, had blossomed at the base school, where his nickname Jet reflected his growing confidence. The scars on his hands from gathering firewood in Willow Creek were fading, but the memory of my past life, his kidnapping, his severed fingers, drove me to protect his future. Lieutenant Colonel Ethan Parker had become a steady presence, his visits filled with warmth as he bonded with Liam over paper planes and model kits. Ethan's injury, a mission scar that left him unable to have children, had drawn him to us, but his kindness was genuine. I watched them in the courtyard, Ethan guiding Liam's hands to fold a paper jet, their laughter a melody that soothed the ache of my past life's losses. Soldiers praised my work at the quartermaster's office, where I mended uniforms, unaware of the fight that had brought us here. Captain Sarah Thompson's justice had secured Liam's place at school, and my job, while James Carter's demotion and Laura Bennett's fall had reshaped Fort Bragg's whispers. Laura, driven by ambition for James's status, had lost her martyr's widow benefits after a DNA test proved Noah was James's son, not her late husband's. Their off-base life was crumbling, but I focused on Liam's light. One evening, Ethan joined us for dinner, his uniform traded for a sweater, his scar-flecked jaw softened by a smile. "Emily, I want to be more than a friend," he said, his voice steady. "I want to marry you and raise Liam as my own." His words stirred hope, but I hesitated to ensure Liam's heart was safe. "Let's see how you two get along," I said, my seamstress's hands pausing on a patch. Ethan nodded, his eyes warm. "Fair enough." Over the following weeks, he proved himself, picking Liam up from school with snacks and helping him build a model F-15, its wings gleaming on Liam's desk. Liam's sketches now included Ethan, a tall figure beside a jet, and his trust grew, his smile brighter than I'd ever seen. At bedtime, I tucked Liam in his sketchbook open to a jet with Dad Ethan scrawled on its tail. "Mom, will Ethan make you cry like the other dad?" He asked, his voice small but searching. My heart ached, the memory of James's slap, vivid. "No, Jet," I said, kissing his forehead. "Ethan's kind and he loves you." Liam nodded, his eyes bright. "I like him, Mom. He makes planes with me." His words sealed my decision. The next day, Ethan and I visited the county clerk, and our marriage certificate was a new thread in our story. I also changed Liam's name to Leo Parker, inspired by Ethan's hope for him to soar like a lion. In my past life, James had named him Liam, meaning unwanted, during his honeymoon with Laura. Now Leo carried the dreams of two parents who cherished him. Our wedding was simple, held in the courtyard with roses as witnesses. Leo stood beside me, his new school bag slung over his shoulder, a paper plane in his hand. Ethan's parents, retired military, beamed, calling Leo their grandson. James appeared at the gate as we exchanged vows, his squad leader's uniform a shadow of his former glory. "Emily, can I see Liam?" He pleaded, his voice desperate. His demotion had crushed his pride. His peers were now his superiors. I stood firm, my hands steady. I said, "His name is Leo, and he's Ethan's son now." Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Leo's my boy. My parents waited decades for a grandson." "Don't cross us, Carter." James shrank back, his eyes dark with defeat, and slipped away the roses, a silent rebuke. Leo ran to me, his jet sketch fluttering. "Mom, is Ethan my dad now?" he asked, his smile wide. I nodded, hugging him. "He is Jet." Once James's, the courtyard was ours, its roses a symbol of healing. Leo's new name and Ethan's love were a triumph, a future I'd been reborn to claim, stitched together with the strength of my farm-born heart. The Fort Bragg courtyard, with its blooming roses, stood as a quiet monument to our healing. I packed our belongings, my seamstress's hands folding Leo's clothes and sketchbooks, each jet drawing a testament to his soaring spirit. My Virginia farm childhood, where I'd stitched hope from scraps, had prepared me for this journey, turning betrayal into triumph. Leo, now 7, bounced around the house, his model F-15 gleaming on his desk, a gift from Ethan Parker, his new father. Ethan's love had transformed Leo. His nickname Jet was a badge of pride at school, where his paper planes and confident smile won friends. The scars of my past life, Leo's kidnapping, James's indifference, lingered, but my divine second chance granted by a radiant voice in the James River had rewritten our story. James Carter's fall was complete. His demotion to squad leader, a far cry from deputy commander, had left him under former subordinates, his pride a casualty of his lies. Laura Bennett, stripped of her martyr's widow benefits after the DNA test, had fled to a rural Virginia town with Noah, her ambition for status shattered. Gossip reached Fort Bragg. Laura, unable to cope with the shame, had become a local official's mistress, abandoning Noah to fend for himself. Once arrogant in his miniature army jacket, the boy faced bullying as the new nobody, a cruel echo of Leo's past. Tragically, Noah died alone, neglected, a victim of Laura's choices. James, broken by the news, took a civilian clerk job, his former subordinate, now his boss, a bitter reminder of his failure to raise his son. I focused on Leo, whose sketches now filled a new book, each jet a dream taking flight. Ethan, now a constant in our lives, had proposed a mission to honor my past life's loss. "Let's take down the traffickers who stole Liam," he said, his eyes fierce with purpose. His tactical skills, honed in covert operations, made him the perfect ally. We worked with the FBI, Ethan posing as a buyer, to infiltrate a trafficking ring operating out of Richmond. I assisted, using my knowledge of the train routes from my past life's tragedy, mapping their patterns. One night, Ethan led a raid on a warehouse, his instincts pinpointing the hideout. The operation rescued dozens of children, their small faces hauntingly familiar, each one a shadow of the son I'd lost. I held Leo close as we watched the news, his hand in mine, his jet sketchbook a shield against the past. Ethan's success earned him a promotion to the Pentagon, a move that promised new opportunities for Leo. As we prepared to leave Fort Bragg, I stood in the courtyard, my hands tracing the rose's petals. This place had been my sanctuary, a symbol of justice won through my reborn resolve. Leo's laughter echoed as he and Ethan played with a paper plane, its wings marked with Jet's family. "Mom, hurry up," Leo called, his smile bright. Ethan joined in, his voice warm. "Honey, the train's waiting." I locked the door, my heart full but reluctant to leave the roses that had witnessed our healing. The train to Washington, D.C. awaited, a far cry from the one that had stolen Leo in my past life. In the capital, Leo thrived, his sketches, now including Pentagon jets, his confidence a testament to Ethan's love. Ethan's parents, who'd embraced Leo as their grandson, showered him with support, their resources ensuring his dreams could soar. I took Ethan's hand, and my seamstress's strength is now a foundation for our family. We boarded that fateful train route again, this time to visit a memorial for rescued children, a tribute to my past life's loss. As I looked at their names etched in stone, I hoped the Leo I'd lost had found peace. My guilt, carried for so long, eased, replaced by gratitude for the divine chance that had saved us. With Leo and Ethan by my side, I stepped into the future, the roses of Fort Bragg, a memory, the skies ahead, endless and bright.